that wasn't like the only thing. At the time, my relationship with God wasn't where I wanted it to be. It wasn't, strong. The communication was just not there. There was a brick wall between God and I. And I was freaking out because I was like, there needs to be communication in order for God to tell me what to talk to you guys about. And I was like, okay, this is, I'm panicking now. And then one night I went to youth and I felt something different about that night because I don't know, that something had, I just felt something different. So I went to youth and the guy who spoke at youth, he said he had a few words for someone, like God had said something to him about a few people and I happened to be one of those people. So he said that God wanted to use me to talk to other people. Like I'm going to look at other people and he wants me to say something to those people. And at that moment, that brick wall that was between God and I, it had fallen down completely. And I felt like, wow, now I can, talk to God. My communication with God is back and my relationship with God is, carrying on. And I felt like what that guy said to me was like a purpose of mine. So I was like, okay, let me go home and pray about this and see what to preach about. And because of that, and I felt like that was my purpose, I felt like today I should talk to you guys about people's purposes. So the title of my message today is The Purpose. So my first point is, are you doing what you want to do or what God wants you to do? And I'm gonna ask somebody to please read for me Proverbs 19 verse 21. Can you please go there? If anyone has it, can you please read?
Many are the plans in the person's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails.
Thank you. So in this verse, it says, many are the plans in a person's heart. So everybody has plans, everybody, from whatever it is, from makeup to what your outfit, everybody has plans. And we all have plans, even for after school, dream jobs, we all have plans. But it is the Lord's purpose that prevails. What you want to do might not be what God wants you to do. There's a difference. And everybody, yes, we do have plans, we do have things that we're good at, like talents, but those talents aren't always our purpose. Now, this brings me to my second point. Do you know what God wants you to do? And where do you stand with God? How strong is your relationship with God? Now, in Jeremiah 1, Jeremiah 1 verse 4. The word of the Lord came to me saying, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. Jeremiah was called to do something. Now, in order for the Lord to say something like this to him, he had to have that special relationship with God. He had to have, proper communication with God. And that's where the relationship falls in. You need to have that relationship with God in order to know what your purpose is. Without a relationship with God, there's no communication. Without communication, you don't know what your purpose is. Now, communication is a really big part with God. Without it, you just don't know what it is. Third point, if you know what your purpose is, what are you doing about it? God had called disciples, from everywhere. And some of them were tax collectors, some of them were fishermen, and they all had something that they were doing, but it wasn't their purpose. And God had called them to follow him. Following God was their purpose. And they had to do something about it. They couldn't just be like, okay, I know what my purpose is, but I'm not going to do anything about it. They had to know, they had to do something about it. And they had to get up and leave whatever they were doing and follow him. They couldn't just sit there and do nothing. One of my friends, Taya, she's good at quite a few things. She's she's an athlete and a model. That's one of the two things that she's really passionate about. But she knew that one of them is what God wanted her to do. And she had to pray about it, and she had to tell some of her friends like us, her really close friends, that guys, can you please pray with me, because I have no idea what I'm doing and I don't know, I need to start now. And she needed to take action then in order to fulfill her purpose. She needed to start early. So she had that communication and she did something about it. My fourth point, are you staying consistent? Stay consistent to what God has called you to do. The first few months or so, let's say you know what your purpose is and you're excited about it and everything is cool, but then you need to stay consistent. In your purpose, for the first time you might be excited about it, but then as you carry on, things are gonna start becoming difficult. Things aren't always going to be easy. Nobody said being a Christian is going to be easy. And as you go on, you need to stay consistent. Even though you are going to go through troubles and all of that, you need to stay consistent. In January, I went to a youth camp, Looking Up camp, and I got the same word as I did when I went to youth. And at the beginning of it, I was excited about it. I went to go and talk to people. I looked at some people and God had said some things to me about those people. And I went to go and talk to them and I was excited about it at first. But then as, I went to school and life happened, I left it. I totally forgot about it and I was just like, oh, God, I'll just deal with you later. And I didn't stay consistent. And I needed to be brought back. So stay consistent to what God has called you. That's why that guy had spoken to me at youth, to bring me back. Because I was so bad, I even forgot to pray sometimes. I was like, this is bad. And you need to stay consistent to what God has called you to do, because it also shows what type of Christian you are. You might say that, oh, if some guy comes into the church and asks, who are you? Are you a Christian? And he holds a gun. And you say, no, I'm a Christian. You say that you're that type of Christian, but you need to start small. You need to start showing with small actions. By staying consistent, you show what type of Christian you are. You show other Christians and even those who aren't Christians that even though I go through tough times, that I'm staying consistent to what God has called me to do. A great example is my parents. My parents have been doing what they have been called to do for a long time. And I can see sometimes for them it's not easy. It is not easy. They get tired and sometimes they just feel so empty because people drain. People drain. With what they do, people drain. And sometimes I feel like, yo, God, what are you doing to my parents? But then they still stay consistent because they know they are setting an example. They know that God has called them to do this, and that's what life is. Whatever God has called you to do, that's what your life is. You don't need to be like, okay, life is this and life is that. I need to do that in order to be living life. Whatever God has called you to do, that is what life is. And yeah, so thank you for setting a great example. And yeah, so stay consistent. So let's just recap. So first, know what God wants you to do and do what God wants you to do, not what you want to do. You may want to be a singer and you may feel like, okay, it's my talent and because God gave it to me, it's my purpose. No. God has called you to do something. And yes, you may have other talents, but sometimes you can use those talents in what God has called you to do. Second, have that strong relationship with God. In that way, you can have communication. You have communication. I mean, you don't only need communication in the beginning. You need communication throughout. If you don't have that communication, you're going to get so lost. You're going to get so lost and you're going to go in different directions and you won't even know what to do with yourself anymore. And take action. Don't just sit around and be like, okay, I know what my purpose is, but I still have other things to do. Take action. Show an example of what God has called you to do. other people who aren't Christians, they're like, Christians, hey, what are they even doing? Sometimes they just look so lost. I mean, that's why I'm not a Christian, because I don't want to be lost like that. Show an example, take action. Don't just sit around, take action. And the last one, be consistent. Stay to what God has called you to do till you die. That way you're rewarded in heaven in so many ways, because you did what was right, you did what God called you to do. And you didn't just sit around and be lazy. You showed an example of, what God has called you to do. Thank you.